All right, folks, welcome to the Dean's Speaker Series. We do one of these every quarter, and the reason we're so thrilled about the speakers that we bring in is that they bring in a real world perspective. They bring in a history and a story about their careers, about how they developed themselves professionally, how they took on challenges in their life, how they have, in Carol's case, risen to the top. And so we're really delighted to put this series on, and particularly delighted this morning to have Carol Kelly here. And one of the reasons I'm delighted to have her here is that she's a 1986 SBU graduate in accounting. And so I know we have intermediate accounting here. Hands up all the intermediate accounting folks. Fantastic. Now, Dr. Soers can't be with you today, right? And so we're delighted to have you here. And then the other class here today is business ethics, right? Dr. Baker's class. Who are the business ethics folks? Fantastic. All right. So welcome to the lecture. And Dr. Kelly. Carol.
That's it.
No,
That's it. I'm the doctor. Yeah. That's it.
Carol was Senior Vice President at Oracle and was there for the last 12 years of her career. She just recently retired. And prior to that, she had jobs at Honeywell, at Mercury, and other companies to prepare herself for her title as Senior VP of Global Finance. In the last few years of her career, she has developed data analytics systems, large processes. She managed an organization of 3,000 people worldwide. She would do extensive traveling around the world to all the folks in various parts. And she really developed a vision for what finance would look like in a large company like Oracle. And I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about what Oracle does and in the Silicon Valley. So we're very proud of Carol as one of our graduates, and we're just delighted that she's come here today to speak to you. So please welcome Carol Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me back there? Yes. Okay, good. I'm loud anyway, so now I'm even louder. This is why I love your dean's laugh, because it's loud like mine. So we hit it off right away, the volume. So I'm Carol Kelly, and I'm proud to say that 5 months ago I retired. So now my job title coming here is I'm a graduate of Seattle Pacific University, a college that helped support me. I like the high touch of the school. It helped me at a time in my life when I needed it, which I can chat a little bit more about later. And the School of Business helped shepherd me through and really is the foundation of my entire career. And without it, I would not have been able to do what I did. And so I'm just so proud and honored that you all are letting me come here and talk about myself and maybe how I can help all of you succeed. I do live in California. I'm up here. My mom lives up here, and I have some brothers and sisters here. So this timed out with a great visit. My husband, he flew up last night. Before that, I was staying with my mom. And I showed him the agenda for today, and my sister was there, and we were talking about what I was going to talk about. And I thought the topics were interesting, but he said, oh, so you're going to talk about you, you, and you. So that's what I'm here to share, and I hope you'll have some questions. And somebody I work with had a great joke that said, well, enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you think of me? So that might be my question at the end of this, but I thought I'd put together some things that I ported myself back to when I was at SBU and making decisions about my career in school. I thought I wanted to share with you all some of my experiences that hopefully will help you. So that's what I'm here for. So let's see. This is sort of an outline I put together to keep me on track. I was so happy too that I could use my own slide template. At Oracle, we had a corporate prescribed one, and my favorite color is purple. So as soon as I saw that, I said, that's the template that I want to use. And Oracle, thank you for the prompting on that. If you don't know, they are an enterprise software company. My mom always said she didn't when she told people I worked at Oracle, nobody knew what that was and nobody knew what I did, but she would just say I was an executive at Oracle. And Oracle makes business software, so enterprise reporting software. Oracle uses their own software. They make also a database application, and Oracle as a company, the founder is Larry Ellison, who I do know, and he also won the America's Cup in sailing, if that may be how you know him. But they make enterprise software that many companies use, database software, and right now they're transforming their whole business to the cloud because they used to have license keys. They got away from that, and now they're going to be on the cloud with companies. So the topics I had, this is what I thought might be of interest, and you can see it's about me, and me. So I wanted to give you a little bit about my background, some tips on building a career in Fortune 500 companies, because that's what I have spent the last 30 plus years in. And then some lessons that I learned. My last role, I worked for Safra Catz, who is a co-CEO of Oracle. She has in Fortune's, she was for a while one of the most powerful women in business. So she was my boss for the last 11 years at Oracle. And I really was honored to be on her team and have her mentorship. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about that. And then maybe for the women and the men, any gender, just some things about being a woman in business. So with that, I might have said most of these, but I retired 5 months ago. I'm now spending my time kind of working on my next chapter, but it's definitely including cycling, downhill skiing, running, spending time with friends and family, and then filling in whatever time is left. My last position, I was Senior Vice President at Oracle. I had about 3,000 people on my team. I had a global role, so I had people all over the world. In the Bay Area, I maybe had 50 people, and everyone else was in some other location. And the team I had supported internal new technology, so Oracle used their own technology, so we were always upgrading systems and developing key performance indicators and migrating technology platforms. So I was in finance, so I was doing that for the finance organization and ensuring we were coordinating with all the rules and regulations and the change management. And then also my organization supported sales, so I had the team that wrote all the business contracts with customers and supported sales in getting their orders booked and all the business done and their sales forecast. So it's very demanding because salespeople, they want everything very fast, and they're coin operated. They're trying to get their sales commissions, so they have a very short attention span. And I had before Oracle, so let's see, I worked at Honeywell, Mercury, and then Cisco. Mercury was a smaller software company that got bought by HP. And then I was at Cisco before Oracle. So just to digress a little bit, how I first started, so I was at SBU, and during my senior year back then, how you got jobs was through the newspaper, want ads. There wasn't LinkedIn or online things. So I got a part-time job at Honeywell that was over here in Ballard, and it was an accounting clerk, and you had to have completed intermediate accounting. And I probably started at 10 hours a week, and then before I knew it, I was almost working full-time and going to school full-time. And it was doing journal entries, things like that. But because I worked there, I was in an environment, they had an internal audit come, and they recruited me to go on the internal audit staff. And so I had my job the end of my junior year. I had my offer letter, and Seattle Pacific was so great with helping me, support me through that process, because I really had to graduate on time because they relocated me to headquarters, which was in Minneapolis. And when you do internal auditing, you travel to all the locations, which were global. And so I never had a decision to go, and being an accounting major, it was usually public accounting or public companies. But I thought that job I was taking, that felt right to me. So I was with Honeywell 14 years. I was in Minneapolis for 3 years. I was in their financial management development program. So every audit you got feedback on your performance and how you were doing. It was behaviors on how you dress, how you act, what were your audit comments, your review comments. And early on I was going to senior management, telling them things they needed to do better. So it was really good development for self-confidence and understanding processes. And so while I was at Honeywell, then after I completed those 3 years, I moved to Frankfurt, Germany. It was really great timing because I was there when the wall fell. And that was in, I think it was 89 or 90. Was it 89? Yeah. And I worked in cost accounting, and I came in the office and everyone had champagne and was so happy. And then shortly thereafter, they were like, boy, these East Germans, they don't know about capitalism, and they're draining the economy, and they have those little Trabant cars. And so I was there 2 years, and then Honeywell moved me to Phoenix, Arizona, and then eventually to the Bay Area. And so I had a lot of job rotations and experiencing different cultures that really added to my experience. So Honeywell moved me to the Bay Area. They had bought a company there, and we fixed some things up. And I really wanted to be in high tech, and Honeywell just at the time wasn't high tech. So it was 99, a great time in the economy, and then I went to Cisco, which that was when Cisco was booming. I think when I got hired, I got stock options and I hadn't vested. Does anybody understand how stock options work? When you get them and you have to, they take a year to vest. And I think at one time I was there 3 months and I hadn't vested, so I couldn't take any of the money. My options were worth $2 million. And I was like, wow, this is like get rich quick. And then 2000, the bust happened, and then they were worth nothing. And I got nothing. So for that part, but it was a great experience to be there when it was booming, growing. And then the downturn in the market, it's when Cisco wrote off $2 billion of inventory. And I got to work on that because I worked in cost accounting. And then we got through that, and I moved up to corporate financial planning. So the big companies really afforded me the opportunity to rotate through a lot of different roles. Yeah, so that's about me. So now I'm here today. So this topic I thought would be of interest, just about building your career in a Fortune 500 public company, because I know when you're going through college, you think about, well, you're getting your degree, but then what are you going to do with your degree? And for me, it in a way was easy because, well, getting the accounting major was hard. I had to do all the homework and study a lot, but then once you get through that, what do you do with it? So I wanted to just share some lessons, and in my role, we hired recent grads and had interns, and these are some of the same things I would tell people I was mentoring, is that first and foremost, you have to own your own career. I think people will help you, they'll give you ideas, but there was a lot of employees that thought the employer was going to tell them what they needed to do. And when I say own your own career, it's be proactive in identifying what you want to do, where do you want your career to go, and it really will come to you, because if you get in an organization and say, your career aspiration, I always said I wanted to be a CFO. I never ended up with that title, but it immediately set a tone in the organization that I had big expectations for myself and for the job. And so some people get in a job and they say, well, I just want to do taxes, or I want to be in this corporate role. So it's important to, I think, know where do you want to be in 5 years? 5 years is a reasonable horizon. And what are the steps that you want to get there? So I always went into owning my own career and then picking an industry. Someone I was recently mentoring, he called me to get a job at Oracle because he said, well, I only want to work at the big names that are moving to the cloud. And that's Amazon and Oracle. And he ended up at Oracle. I know Amazon is kind of a sexier company because you can do Amazon Prime and it's more brand recognition, but he went to Oracle because he thought the projects would be more interesting to work on. And so, picking an industry and then owning your career and trying to understand what are the jobs in there that you can get that are, it's reasonable. And I always tried to look at, well, what are other people doing in there? Who seems to be moving around or a rising star, and what are they doing? And so I think, owning your career, thinking about it, looking 5 years out, what are 2 to 3 moves that you can make or do to help you get there? And then this one, I think, is a personal motto, but I know some people have a different way, to see it as a marathon, not a sprint. So one of my first manager jobs, I think the title was supervisor of accounts receivable. I mean, that sounds like totally boring, right? That maybe it does where you are because you think you might make good money, but I had friends saying, why are you doing that? You could have a higher level job. And I just saw that a career is building blocks, and that if I could get as much experience in different things, then I would be a more valuable employee and I would develop myself and have a more interesting career. And so in big Fortune 500 companies, most of them they rotate people around because it's so dynamic, you can do different things, but you have to thrive on that, the change, the movement. And I probably had about 75 different jobs just within 4 companies where I rotated. There was a reorg or there was a promotion opportunity. And then I always would look 2 to 3 jobs out. If I was supervisor of accounts receivable, I said, yeah, but I have this job today, but I'm going to fix this and do a great job and straighten this out, and then I'll move to that job. And it really worked out like that. And I made my career plan and said that's what I want to do, and it worked out. But it changed a little bit along the way. And so I think when you go into a large public company, there's just different opportunities. I know when I was here at SVU, a lot of people were really focused, I don't know if it's still that way today, the accounting majors, on going into public accounting, which is excellent experience. I think from public accounting, a lot of companies hire. I know at Oracle, Ernst & Young, they were our public accounting firm, and I knew all those people, and many of them wouldn't make, partner. They would end up leaving. So that's a great opportunity as well. But I found being in a publicly traded large company, I felt like I was solving more complex problems, and there was just opportunities to see a lot of different things. Plus, you could be part of something with a team. And I think in public accounting, you come in and out, and when you're in public companies, you're part more of a team. So I guess I amassed a lot of experience in different roles. And my goal in every role was, a lot of times I would take jobs nobody wanted because there were problems in that job. Like even the supervisor of accounts receivable, they had a lot of past due billings that no one seemed to be able to bring current. So I think whenever you get in a job, you try to figure out, what problems can I solve? I find some people want to come in the office and get a checklist that their boss gave them and just do that, and that makes you feel, well, I'm doing what my boss wants. Whereas if you can go into a job and say, look at all these problems and I know how to fix that, and sometimes they'll be really hard, it makes you more valuable, and oftentimes the organization sees the problem and you can help a lot of people along the way. The other thing is, I put these words on here, that in jobs or in environments, I know you all are in school, so you have tests and finish lines and papers due and homework. But that needs to transcend into work, and it's what I mean by closure-oriented. So many people have a tennis match with issues and don't solve things. In my career, I had a reputation for being closure-oriented, in that something would get finished and we could move on to the next thing. And I would just stress how important that is to be in an environment and you can be relied upon to bring things to closure. Or if it takes a different path, you'll help make that path, instead of so many times things linger and they just can't move forward. And then the last is to create a team achievement. So I was probably about 7 years into my career. Then I was a supervisor, and then I just became a manager and learned to manage teams and people. But even when I didn't, I saw early on, if I could make what I was trying to do, if I could understand how it helped someone else, then we would have a team achievement. So as an example, when I first got to Oracle, I think people probably understand about closing the books. In a public company, you have to close the books so you can have the earnings call and report to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I first got to Oracle 12 years ago. They took 10 days to close their books because they had all these global entities. And because I'd worked at Cisco, Cisco had a 3-day close where they could have all the P&L, the earnings statement in 3 days. And Oracle, they took way too long. So I got to Oracle and I was saying to people, hey, at Cisco, we did this in 3 days. Why don't we do this? And that fell completely flat because people thought, well, who is this person? Nobody likes you to come in and say, I know this, I'm a know-it-all. So then I quickly realized what I needed to do is go to people and say, hey, I have an idea how you could get your reports quicker, the sales guy. And then they got interested in my idea. And I went to the person that was the controller and I said, hey, your team could work less hours if we could get the books closed faster. So I spent a lot of time trying to make my problem someone else's solution. And so then if we solved it, we could all go up together. And that was a big lesson that I learned about team achievement, that I can't come in and just say, this is my idea, because it makes you sound sort of snooty or you think a lot of yourself, but rather trying to understand other people's problems and how could I solve it to help me. So that's probably some of the biggest lessons about Fortune 500 companies. I know we're going to have questions at the end, but can I just pause, because then I was going to kind of move to my next topic if anybody had questions. And if you don't, then we're going to do the quiz on everything I just said. No. I had a team of people and they were in Prague. He's thinking about going to Prague, so we were talking about it. And whenever I would come visit and do an operations review, they did a quiz. And I knew it, so I never said anything, but new people would come and they'd do a talk like this. And it'd be a goofy quiz, but it would be something like, what were the top 3 things about working in Fortune 500 companies? So that's, oh, okay, here.
I missed the point about look 2 to 3 jobs on horizon. Just tell me, what did that mean? Are you looking ahead at the next job, or what did that mean?
So I wanted to be in an environment that could support 2 to 3 jobs. I was horrified to get hired and sit in the same job my whole life. Because when I had the part-time job at Honeywell, there were people that were accounts payable clerks or accounting, business, financial analysts. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I knew I wanted a career. Sure. And so I said, oh, if I become the manager of accounts receivable, I could see that once I get that solved, and that's going to take me about 2 years, I could move to cost accounting, because you know that people move around or quit. And so I always tried to take a job and see if the environment would support 2 or 3 other jobs.
Job that had a future path into some new things.
Yeah, that's better said than I did. You must be a college professor. Yeah. No, that's good. Thanks for asking a question. Does anybody else have anything? No. This is you get class credit for this. No. So this I wanted to talk about some leadership lessons that I learned from working for Safra Catz, who, just like Oracle, I appreciate is not a household name like Jeff Bezos or some of these other people, but she's equally as powerful and respected in the business community if you ever look her up. But she really is a low-profile leader in that she just worked at Oracle and wasn't really involved in tons of things outside of the company. But I would say there were 5 areas that she helped me learn how to be a better leader and a better employee. And really a lot of it is just life lessons. So the first is around, I had worked for, in many environments that people would go into meetings with higher level people and think they were answering a question, but the question was really much broader. So what I learned early on is some leaders, you have to have all the facts in a situation, very comprehensive, very thorough, and then anticipate every question. And someone early on said that you should sit and think about when you're going into a meeting talking about an asset purchase. You may get asked about, well, what's the total asset balance on our books? And how much is depreciation expense? And if we buy this, how much will this lead to? So unfortunately, all your accounting homework that you do, for those of you in accounting, it'll follow you your whole career, because people will ask you questions like that in meetings if you're a financial analyst to go in. So the people that were the most successful are the people that had the facts and could anticipate any question that they were being asked. The other was to build a great team. So many people get into environments and don't realize that it really takes a team to be successful, or that the effort is better with a team. I know in college you probably have team projects, and maybe there's 1 or 2 people that seem to do all the work, and other people do some of the work. And so if you can always bring your best self to every effort and bring people along with you, you'll be successful and the team will. And I think that some people undervalue that building a team, how that can create success. And that really leads me to the next point. It's really not about your ego or yourself if you do what's right for the business. I know we have some, as you raise your hand, business ethics students here. And I have seen, through being an internal auditor, working in corporate finance, so many employees that were sort of doing things for their ego, and they ended up being violations against policy, something that initiated a SEC investigation. And the things that you learn in your class, they're so applicable to being in the corporate environment. So a couple of small examples. This is a little bit of a tangent from what I was saying, but we had someone just recently, about 2 years ago at Oracle, that was part of a loving extended family, and he thought it was okay to hire his son as a summer intern. And there's a corporate policy that you can't hire family members. I think people have probably all heard of nepotism, but there's also a policy that you can't hire family members and have them in your reporting chain without getting approval. And this guy just didn't take the time to read the policy, and he got fired over that, and it was devastating to him. And he, eventually found another job, but I thought, gee, if the guy had just read the policy that he needed approval for that, but it was really interpreted as something for his ego, a violation of policy, and companies really do apply the rules internally. So there's other bigger ethics questions, you know, that get faced in the corporate environment. Things around, when I was leaving Oracle, there was a SEC investigation. It actually went public that someone had filed with the SEC that Oracle was manipulating its cloud revenue through a forecast. And I had to spend a lot of time because it really wasn't true. But it's so important when you get in a company to understand their policies and how they integrate with outside regulatory agencies, continuity of employment, because I saw so many problems occur because there wasn't things buttoned down around that. And it certainly, working in corporate finance environments for over 30 years has made me much more principled in what I do. So how many of you are in the ethics, the business ethics? Oh, you're in that. You're in everything. Yeah. Yeah, so, and you're probably studying some of these things, right, in corporations and.
Yeah, we are, and we tend to focus probably more on the theological and philosophical rather than the compliance.
Yeah.
Because one of them goes more, and I get your opinion on this, but one of them goes more in the direction of legal policy, which is an important, necessary thing. The other one goes more in the direction of what do I do to be a person of virtue and character? And they're not always the same thing. So hopefully they line up. Anyway, that's one of the things we do in the class is we think about that.
Wow, that's a good one. That's deep. Yeah.
You can ask them this, but
Yeah. Is there any recent example, like an example or a case study, or?
well,
That's interesting.
we're actually doing one in finance next week, okay? And it's a case of somebody who was in a mortgage bubble situation as a lender who starts cooking the books. And people around him want to help him out because they're being loyal. So it's a mixed, this is a complex one. It shows the mixture between desire to be loyal in the group, to the group, and at the same time not violate ethical norms. Anyway, that's getting you off track.
And that's a case study that you're doing, yeah. Okay, well, I don't know the answer to it. You can't divulge the answer to it. That's interesting, yeah. Yeah. Have they had that yet? Are they chewing on that yet? No. Yeah. Well, one time when I was an auditor, we found someone that was skimming off small tools and selling them at like a swap meet. And then as we looked into it, because we were trying to get the facts behind it, it was that his son had incurable cancer and he ran out of money. His insurance wasn't covering some of the procedures, and then we had to investigate it. It got reported, and those situations, yeah, they pull at your heartstrings. And how do you see them? Yeah. Wow. So everybody needs you by their side to keep them on the course. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So the other lesson on here is about empowering everyone. So one of the things as a manager that I always tried to do was help people understand the vision and the goals and how they fit in. Even the smallest task that someone was doing, even the people that vacuumed the office and cleaned the office, I would make sure to thank them. Sometimes they'd come at night, I'd leave them sticky notes because they were creating an environment that we could work in. And so I think when you're in large groups, to make every person feel part of something and how they fit in, because it's so easy for people to feel disconnected. And so at Oracle, in my team, we had a vision of what we're doing, but sometimes that's so big that you don't know how you fit. And then we tried to have sub-teams, and I had 3,000 people around the goal, but everybody do work of how does your job contribute to this overall vision, and that you doing it well helps the company be successful. And even when the earnings call would come out because everybody couldn't know it in advance, and we'd see the revenue numbers. We would spend time talking about, wow, you worked on that deal with that salesperson and that tied into that, so that people felt like the revenue reported they helped achieve, even if they weren't out selling it. So I think that's so important when you're trying to mobilize and get people excited about what they do, how they fit into the bigger picture. And it's something that I used to spend a lot of time on so that people felt their small tasks, fit in and was helping achieve things. And then the last, which I know is really important to this school, balancing rules and teams and values, is embracing diversity. So I was talking this morning at a breakfast. I worked at Cisco and then Oracle, and I felt Cisco was, at the time I was there, it was very homogenous. It was mostly Caucasian men. I think you've seen studies about, even in Silicon Valley, Google, Facebook, they're saying I think it's like 65% white males under 40. And so diversity is not only about ethnic and gender, but age and demographic and background. And when I moved to Oracle, it's sort of understated on their diversity, but at Oracle there was almost everything, every age, every gender, every ethnic background, and I felt that was much more stimulating to creating thought, creating solutions. And I think it's really important when you go in a company, it's something you don't know about yourself till you're actually faced with it. And is that important to you, or what does that look like? And I felt that when I worked at Cisco, while it's a very high-tech company, I felt, this morning we talked about glass ceilings. I felt like at Cisco, I had hit a glass ceiling because, as being female, very direct in my style, very enthusiastic, my last job at Cisco, I was a senior director, and I felt it was going to be tough to get to the next level or progress my career. And it felt to me like the environment wasn't diverse enough. And then when I got to Oracle, a lot of the skills that I didn't feel were as valued at Cisco were valued at Oracle, like closure-oriented, results-oriented. And those culture things are so hard to tell until you're in them. Cisco touts that they're very consensus-driven decision-making, but I found it very passive-aggressive. You get in a room and all agree, and then everybody leaves and says to their buddy, oh, can you believe they said that? And they try to unravel decisions. And when I worked at Oracle, people agreed in the room, and there was a cultural norm that then you went off and did what the agreements were, and if something was wrong, it would get changed later. And so it's just what kind of environment, do you thrive in? And as I developed longer in my career, I realized the importance of that. That's very subtle. And we talked a little bit this morning. I had a smaller breakfast about when you interview, how do you assess that? And I think somebody had said it's about mixing with the people, seeing what they're like, seeing how you would fit in, or people smiling if you do have an in-person interview. But one of the things I said is that the best interview advice I got was to be yourself, because that's who you want them to hire. And when we used to hire people, I think sometimes people prepared and tried so hard in the interview, which you do have to do a fair amount of, but then when the person was hired, we never saw that person again that we interviewed. So you don't want to manipulate yourself or how you're coming across to the environment, and they don't hire you, and then it doesn't fit for them or you. But I find the more diversity in an environment, the better. And it's sometimes not so easy to see. Sometimes you can, like, this is a very diverse audience, just looking out in the room. But it helps, I think, the environment be stronger because there's diversity of thought. So I think that's all I had. I might have talked too fast. 10, 12, not bad. Does anybody have a discussion point or a story to share? And then we'll go to the pop quiz. Yes, hi.
I have a question. What do you think was your most versatile role? So, meaning, like, do you think the skills you learned in cost accounting were most helpful later on in a different role? Or maybe internal auditing because you learned more about the company itself?
That's a really good question. I actually think every experience was a building block, and the two you cited, those are good. I used cost accounting. I got into manufacturing finance, they called it, and I thought, oh boy, goody, I know what this FIFO, LIFO, amortizing, and a lot of it was very relevant, cost accounting. When I was in auditing, it taught me to take a process apart and put it back together. That was really good because then I knew how to effectuate change. Yeah, I feel I was like a sponge, and everything was good and had meaning, even if it wasn't good, because then I knew I didn't need to spend time on that. I felt my accounting degree was very relevant. I felt my support and environmental from this school was relevant because I'm sure it's the same values today, but the college really helps you be a better person in a work environment. I would say, the only thing I didn't use a lot was the classes I had to take in tax because I didn't do taxes, but it was still good to have that. Yeah, it's a good question, but I think the curriculum you're in, are you an accounting major? Yeah, I think it's all relevant, and you'll find ways that you use it. Yeah, I know another skill that was really good that we also did in accounting was discounted cash flows. I was like a rock star how I knew how to do that because people didn't really know how sometimes, I don't know why they didn't, but maybe they weren't paying attention about things, but that's important when you're in a startup because you have to make payroll, when you're making equipment decisions. I mean, I've used that in my everyday life. And, even the double entry system of accounting helps you think about relationships. I mean, I love accounting. I think it's about, well, if even situations in life are a debit and then you have a credit. And it's a very versatile training. I've heard so many people, I feel sad, they'll say, oh, I hardly use anything from my education. And I feel like I had the opportunity to leverage a lot of it in ways that maybe you only sort of see when you look backwards. But were you thinking of dropping a class or no?
No, I was just thinking like different positions to take on in internal auditing and actually cost accounting are two of the top ones.
Yeah. What year are you?
I'm a junior.
And you're trying to figure out where you want to land or?
Yeah, so I would say similar. I like public companies instead of doing public accounting work. And so what roles would be most beneficial for a career in a public company? And so similarly, I've gotten advice for internal auditing and cost accounting. So.
Yeah, and I actually think a lot about your career is timing too. So just hypothetically, and it's maybe a company we all can relate to and is here, is Amazon is here. And let's say you're saying, okay, well, internal auditing, I should go into our cost accounting. And you get an interview there and neither of those groups are hiring, but they're hiring, a business planner. So, okay, maybe you just kind of skip that. Or you can get it later. And I don't know Amazon if what they have for internal audit. I mean, every company does. Maybe you could get hired as a business planner or financial analyst and go into internal audit later. But this notion that, and thanks for helping me clarify it, on 2 to 3 jobs out, So when you're interviewing, you could say to people, well, what other career rotation opportunities? And I never made it about I want to get promoted or more money. It was, I'm trying to build my skills, what rotation opportunities? So you are interviewing for this job, but then when you're assessing it, where do people typically go? And maybe it'll be a different path, right? Because one is to identify the industry and then the companies and then just see what they have. And I think it's a good job market right now. So I would feel there are probably a lot of opportunities. You know, it's not like certain years where they're like, oh, whoever's graduating this year, we all feel sorry for them. Right or no? I think it's good. Thank you for sharing though. Yeah.
Kind of a follow-up to that. You mentioned in this talk and also earlier that you felt like working in these Fortune 500 companies gave you a chance to try different things and to move around a little bit. But I've also heard from some of our alumni that they got into a big company, the company found out they were really good at one thing, you know, cost accounting or whatever, and niched them, and they couldn't advance and they couldn't move around and they finally had to leave the company. Is that a cultural difference, and how do you assess that?
That is a great question, yeah. So I think ended up doing some things that I didn't really know I was good at, and maybe I thought I was going to do something different. So, but I was able to continue to advance. So I got a reputation as a problem solver, and my last jobs, I would get phone calls from my boss, who was upstairs, would just call me and say, I've just had it with this group, we're moving it under you. So I got hardware quoting, which isn't even really a finance thing. Oracle bought Sun. I really never wanted to run hardware quoting, but I got a reputation for, I always developed KPIs because I realized to manage people remotely, I had to manage the process, not the people. When I first had, as a manager, somebody working for me in Japan, I was like, how am I going to manage them? Because when I'm in the day, they are in the night, they're way over there. And so I realized I needed KPIs to measure, to run I was leading a process, I was managing a process, not managing people. I was leading people, but managing the process. So what happened to me is that then I got this reputation for, if you don't know what's going on in a team, give it to Carol, because she'll make KPIs, and then with that, we'll have the right resources, the whole thing will get straightened out. And I got job after job after job. And I kept saying to my boss, I like mergers and acquisitions, because I like the discounted cash flow of buying companies. And I never got back to that. But so I don't know the alumni here, you know, what happened to them, but I never stayed so fixated on a goal, and I sort of was willing to let the environment I was in bring out the best in me. And so I think I went in a different way than I thought I wanted to, because I was in an environment I loved, working for someone I loved, and they almost branded me. It's like somebody once said, I don't know if this is true, but it sounds good. You can't give yourself a nickname. Somebody else has to. You can't, you could say, call me that, but a nickname is really given by someone else. So sort of where I ended up was given to me in a way. But I also worked with somebody once that was trying to mentor me and give me career advice, and he pulled out a spreadsheet. And he said, I want to be a CFO, and here's the age, the job, and the salary I have to make. And he goes, you need to do this, and then you'll be a CFO. Because if you don't, you'll get distracted. And I said, thank you. And I walked away and I just threw it out. And I was like, oh, that's so limiting to me, so limiting. So yeah, I think maybe love is like that, right? You find someone, you think you love them, but maybe they see things in you didn't see in yourself. So maybe that's how my career was too. But I did leave Cisco because I felt glass ceiling for me. But that wasn't so much about what I was doing. It's that I wanted to continue to expand my career. So that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah.
Other than the glass ceiling problem, did you face any big obstacle when you're moving through your career? Looking back now with your experience and knowledge, what do you wish you could have done differently?
Oh, that's a good question. So obstacles, I talked a little bit this morning about it. I feel the obstacle I had, I know, so it's cute if I can digress. I was speaking with Mark before I came here, and we were talking about topics, and he said, you know, all the stuff in the news about the Me Too and sexual harassment, and I heard about all that, and you know, I didn't really have that challenge. So I was just with my mom, and she was saying, well, what are you going to talk to at your school? And I was telling her, my mom, she has a chemistry degree, and she worked till she was about 30, and she said, I wonder why I never got sexually harassed. She said, I think I was too serious. And she wasn't meaning anything. It was just cute. My mom's 92, so it was sweet, the comment. And we had a big laugh about it. I said, Mom, that's such a funny statement. But one of the challenges I had was pay equality between men and women, and I do think that's still relevant. And so we always said, if you take a job, that's market rate, because you took the job for that pay. But then you get in environments and you somehow or another find out what other people make. Either they tell you, or you get nosy, or there's a pay thing around. And so I oftentimes found there were men that had less experience than me, sorry men, and they made 30, 40, 50% more than me. And that really bothered me. Now, there is recent, I think, legislation that, and even as you change jobs, they say, what were you making before? And I never was really good at knowing how to negotiate salary. Eventually, it all worked out for me, but that was always my challenge, was sort of the pay equality. Would I do anything different? That's a good question. Yeah, I feel such abundance that I have had from my career. I feel I exceeded my expectations, and I couldn't even say, I mean, I can't process it like that, because I feel such abundance and so grateful. And I was saying this morning when I went to retire, I worked, I never got laid off, I never took a break. I was always supported, even though I was in some tough environments, and it was my decision to leave the workforce. My husband is retired and has been waiting for me to play with him. And so how I feel abundance is when I was leaving, they did a big reorg and 9 people got promoted. So my mom now is saying, gee, when Carol retired, it took 9 people to replace her. And that's not really true, but yeah, I feel abundance, and I just wish all of you, I hope maybe you're feeling that now, but it's great. So thank you for asking that. Are you an accounting major? Oh, see, love those accounting majors, yeah. And what year are you? A senior, and what are you thinking about?
I feel like the trend at SPU, personally, the professors are always, they're kind of pushing me towards public accounting, but I'm not really interested in that, so I'm thinking
Yeah.
about
Public accounting is fantastic. I'm just offering another perspective. I, being in public companies, I always worked with the auditors. I love them. You know, I had to answer all their questions, sit with them, and then my last job at Oracle, I had to go to Washington, D.C. with the partners because there were some things with the Security and Exchange Commission that worked out fine, but I have a lot of respect for public accounting. You can't go wrong by that as a first career step, because you can, public accounting is like designer clothes. It's like Oh, it's good on your resume, right? And you want to think about building your resume, and you get a lot of great experience. You usually work with dedicated teams. They have it nailed on how to motivate people and develop people, and you just can't go wrong. But because I had that job while I was finishing school that just led to the corporate audit staff, and I thought, wow, I don't want to do audit accounts receivables 5 times. I can go to China and do an audit. And so that was just my opportunity. And I think now public companies are hiring more, and the Seattle area has the prominence with, Oracle has about 1,000 people here, Facebook is here, Amazon is here, so there's other companies to go to, but you can't go wrong in public accounting. You get really good skills, but if you don't feel the calling, or the interviews get hard, I think there's just other paths as well. So I'm just representing another one, but yeah.
You have obviously been very successful, and do you have any tips on how to stay humble and to deal with arrogance?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. They're in environments, and you don't want to get hubris yourself, right? I sometimes at work, I tried to see situations that were challenging, and I would coach my team, because I had a lot of people working for me, some of them inexperienced, and would tell them to, if they were frustrated by trying to work with a team or someone that was arrogant, I would say you've got to see this as a game, and you can't take things personal. Because I think when you're a sensitive, caring person, that you hope everyone is, but I saw so many times people at work could take things personal if someone was too direct or dismissive. And I was in a lot of meetings with Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle. He's very smart. There's so many stories of people being in a meeting and walking out being no longer employed. And but I would just go into it as a game, and I would have my facts and anticipate every question, and yeah. And then if you always think about bringing a team with you, then I think that keeps you humble. If you make it a team effort, then a team is only good as the weakest link, and so you got to bring the weakest link along. But if you say it's all about me, I think then you end up in trouble. We see a lot of our unnamed leaders of the world today that make it all about them, right? And people get in trouble, and there's no one there to help them. So I think if you have a team approach. Thank you. It's good. Hi.
Hello. Regarding your point about embracing diversity, what type of role did inclusive leadership play at Oracle? And can you describe its importance in the workplace and how that aspect contributed to any specific successes at Oracle or even here?
Sure. So one of the things that I tried to make sure, when you get in companies, I think it's not legal anymore, but early in my career, they would actually, human resources, which is sometimes now called human capital management, they would run statistics on diversity, right? And in Silicon Valley, you see the statistics that a lot of the high-tech companies are over 60% white males under 40. And so people run statistics internally about how many ethnic, age group, gender, and I always paid attention to that. I wanted to make sure that my direct reports and in my organization we had diversity. And some of it was protection from people feeling devalued. And in big companies, there's things like equal opportunity employment, that people can go file complaints that they weren't considered for jobs. And so it's just good hygiene to make sure that you have diversity in your organization. And then I think when you have a lack of diversity, decisions can get made that they're sort of groupthink, and it can take you down paths that you just don't want to go. And so I found, I guess some of the diversity of thought I had, well, I had employees on my staff that were in Bangalore, India, and China. And I would try to get them to lead actual initiatives that we were doing, and which was very hard for time zone challenges. And they actually had a different approach to problem solving. I found that the employees in China and India, they approach problems by understanding and knowing all the data. And Americans sometimes just jump to conclusions without all the facts. And so they would lead a lot of projects that we actually would end up with a healthier result. And I also at Oracle would tell all my team, I would see managers that said, well, I'm just hiring the best candidate, and their whole staff would be women. And I'd say, well, that probably is all the best candidate, but you need to make, and they'd be white females. And I'd say, well, you should really look at the diversity of your staff. It's all white females under 40, and you really should have some men on there, maybe have different ethnic diversity than whites on your staff, because you'll get a better outcome to solving problems. So it's something, though, that I think sometimes humans gravitate to what they're comfortable with, which is their own ethnic background or gender. And I just see that people solve problems differently. I think women are more, and maybe you've had some of this, but women oftentimes are more relationship oriented and want to pull everybody in, and sometimes the men are the one that just hard charge up the hill and want everyone to follow. And so when you have both those styles working together, it creates a better fabric. Thank you. What's your major?
Business marketing.
That's good. That's good. What year are you?
Senior.
And where are you looking to go or do, or?
Keeping my options open right now.
Yeah.
Just asking employers about how their workplace culture is, workplace environment.
Yeah. That's a good degree. That's a good degree. I worked a lot with the corporate marketing people at Oracle. It's amazing. They're amazing. They do amazing things. Branding. I don't know if you've looked at that at all, but it's good. Thank you. Yes. Hi.
So you started out of SPU as an individual contributor, and you worked up the corporate food chain. And I followed a similar path at Microsoft before coming to SPU as a professor. And could you talk to the students a little bit about that transition of becoming a first manager, going from an individual contributor to a first manager to then managing other groups and stuff like that? Did you have any lessons learned? What were the hard parts? I look back in my career, that was probably the single most hardest transition point.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was working at Honeywell, and I was living in Germany, and I was looking to come back to the US with Honeywell because they had sponsored me. And a division in Phoenix, Arizona, they said, oh, this division, it was industrial control, so they made the control devices for, like, they had a lot of oil and gas and process flows, and it was very engineering environment. And I was told they're hiring managers and they don't have enough women managers. So this is back to the diversity question that I think I used to my advantage, because they said they are specifically asking for female managers to be given preference because they had like no women managers. So I flew from Germany. I had supportive corporate, but they had to like me. And I met with them, I interviewed, and this was my supervisor of accounts receivable. That was managing people. And I was moving from Germany into an environment of people that lived there. And so I wanted to be humble, not like, oh, I just lived in Germany and aren't I cool? And then the hardest thing for me was I was managing people. I think every one of them was older than me, and some by 30 years older than me. They almost all made more money than me because I was just 7 years in, and some of them had been, some were like, the accounts receivable was credit checks and billing, and some of them were credit professionals. I didn't know anything about credit except I'd audited it or accounts receivable. And so it was having older people work for me and then trying to understand how to have a relationship with them but not be their friend. I had to be their boss. And then how did I try to motivate them with me as their manager? Because I knew, I even was in one meeting and a couple of men were in there and said, oh, she looks so young. And so I was getting the female comments, the youthful comments, and then had to be successful. So what I pulled out of my bag of tricks was if I can find a problem that every single person is having and I can help them with it. Like all these invoices are hung up and they can't get the salespeople to follow up with the customer. They're trying to do good hygiene on credit assessments, but they don't have a system and to do the assessment, and they want to do a credit limit that you can only book this and then you have to pay, or these payment terms, and nobody supports them. So I sat with everybody, interviewed them, said, you know, tell me the challenges you have, I'm here to help. And that was probably the hardest job I had, because most of the stuff I had no idea how to fix it, but I knew I had to get everybody on my team, and it was by helping them be successful would make me successful. How did you do that? Was that similar? Or?
I feel like I failed miserably. I think that idea of kind of a servant leadership and showing your employees you're there to support them is kind of, you know, one of the best things you can do. So
Yeah.
Obviously it worked out for you.
Yeah, that worked out for me. But then I was rotated after that into a job and was told in advance that there was a bunch of performance issues and that these people had to work out of the company. They wanted them to leave the company, and they said, but you make up your own mind. So I had to navigate through, how do you assess somebody's performance? How do you exit somebody from the company with dignity? And very, very challenging. And that second job, I had a lot of hard lessons from. So, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Dealing with your own problems is like really hard, and you're taking on other people's problems. How did you make sure to like not burn out or just stay on your toes?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe I do have now an example for what I would have done differently. I probably worked almost too much. I was so excited to have some of the opportunities that I did. I would work a lot. I'd spend a lot of time with people, and then I'd spend the evening doing work or figuring things out. And maybe I could have struck a better balance in that. You know, I might have missed a few bike rides or family things or a ski trip. I took vacations, but yeah, I think work-life balance is challenging, especially when you're in an environment, you're thriving and you're really excited about what you do. Yeah. I had a boss once, corporate called and they wanted a forecast. And I made the mistake of not saying, when did you need that? So I came in, I stayed really late on a Friday night, and I came in on a Saturday, and I emailed it to him like Saturday night thinking, oh yeah, I got this done. And he called me up and chewed me out and said, what are you doing working on the weekend? And I was just stunned, and I didn't want to say to him, well, you told me you wanted this. I just sort of said, oh, you're right. And he said, well, that's such a bad example. And then my learning from that was, ask people when did they need something. So it's hard, and it's hard in, I think, today's world because it's competitive and it's fast moving, and it's like a rising tide of work, always work. Yes, hi.
Hi. You mentioned being really strong at developing KPIs, and I was just wondering if you ever felt like you were given all these tasks, but advancement was hard because you were such an asset in this area. And if you've ever felt like that, how would you strategically advise us to maneuver these difficult situations so that you are doing what you're good at, but then not just stuck with what you're good at and can continue to grow?
Boy, you guys ask really good questions. Yeah, I guess I feel like I think I grew into realizing that was my brand, is sort of big data and KPIs, and it's amazing. You can bring that to almost everything. I would tell my team, even the marketing people can talk about how many leads they had and how many customers, and so you can walk into any situation with data about it to give a perspective or a dimension. And I probably, if my career was going to keep going, I think then you have to learn to be assertive with your management about, I know I have this reputation on KPIs, and you're giving me all these groups that you don't know what's going on in, and I'm figuring that out, but I really want to work on this. And I think over time, if you're a good performer, they'll accommodate it. But I actually started learning to love it and love the reputation of it. I had the reputation at the board of directors at Oracle that I was good at that, and my boss would promote me that way. I was meeting with customers about that, and so I sort of grew into a brand that wasn't my design. But I think if I wanted out of it, I could have gone, and you just have to know when to be assertive and said, well, that's great, I did that, I want to do something else. It's a good question. Oh, there's Mark, he's giving me the hook.
I actually hate to cut this short, because these are great questions and great answers, but I know there's another class in here in about 10 or 15 minutes. So,
Great.
Thank Carol for her time.
Aw, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.